Call the Tuesday, May 14th, 2019 meeting of the City of Aiken Planning Commission to order. Please, if you've got cell phones, we'd ask that you would turn them off during the meeting. It won't interrupt anything. We got two sessions of minutes to approve. The March the 12th, 2019 work session and regular meeting, and the April 9th, 2019 work session and regular meeting. Do I hear a motion on those?
I'll move that we approve both sets of minutes.
Second?
Second.
Okay. Any questions, comments? All in favor? Raise your hand. Opposed?
I'll need abstain from being absent in the April
Okay.
session.
Okay. One abstention. He was absent the April meeting. Okay. No old business on the agenda. New business. The first item is application number 19-20021, an annexation request by Westside One LLC on Silver Bluff Road. Anybody to speak in favor of this proposal? Anybody to speak opposed to this proposal? Okay. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
Application 19-20021, annexation request, tax parcel 106-16-02-019. I move that we recommend annexation to City Council, contingent on sale of the property to applicant with the time increment to be set by the Planning Department.
Just for clarification purposes, that's also zoning to GB, general business.
And zoning, from current zoning, urban development to general business.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. Okay. All in favor, raise your hand. Opposed, like sign. Okay. 3B, application number 19-910066, installation of a public telecommunication facility adjacent to 37 Wire Road Northeast by the South Carolina Educational Television Commission. Property is located right next to the new police station, City of Aiken Police Station. Anybody here to speak on behalf of this proposal? Yes, sir.
Yay.
My name is John Goins. I'm with Tower Engineering Professionals out of Raleigh, North Carolina. I was tasked by the South Carolina Educational TV to provide the plan, the layout of the new facility. I'd just like to echo the staff report saying that this would allow for the removal of the older tower behind the former county complex off of Richlands Avenue West. I'm here for any questions you may have. Thank you.
Then this is an essential, this facility is essential to running the police department and various things around the city.
Correct. For public safety communication, city, county, state agencies, yes.
Okay. Okay.
Is this taller than the existing tower?
Same height.
Same height?
It's a different type of tower, whereas it doesn't have guide wires stretching out. There's just not enough land in that 2-acre parcel.
Okay.
Do you think it'll, excuse me?
Go ahead.
How long do you think it'll take to construct the tower?
We have to undergo a few environmental thresholds, federal thresholds, so that takes 3 to 4 months. Ordering the tower, I'd say it's about 9 months away.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
In regards to the site plan notes, and this is maybe a dumb question, but it says that the proposed location of the tower is located in a flood zone. Is that correct?
The parcel does have a flood zone to the east,
Okay.
southeast, and the
That's what I
lower
thought.
elevations.
Yep.
The entire construction outside.
Per- I thought that was,
Right.
okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Anyone? Okay, thank you very much. Anybody else wants to speak in favor? Anybody wants to speak in opposition to this application? Okay. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, with respect to application number 19-91006, I move that we recommend this to City Council for its perusal and subsequent approval.
Okay. And let me just clarify, you find this is in compliance with the plan?
Comprehensive
Yes.
plan.
Comprehensive plan?
Yes.
And that second is still good, right?
Still good.
Okay. Any questions? Any discussion? Okay, everybody in favor? Raise your hand. All opposed? Okay, unanimously. Okay, 3C and D. C is application number 19-60012, rezoning request from office to plan commercial regarding 828 Richland Avenue and 159 Morgan Street by WTC Investments LLC. And D is application number 19-23001, concept plan approval on the same property, essentially the old hospital and the senior center. Now, we'll consider these together as one item because essentially the rezoning is going to be, would be planned commercial. So we'll be approving the concept plan or disapproving it and the rezoning request to plan commercial. Anybody here speak in favor of this?
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, staff, I'm Tom Wyatt, manager of WTC Investments LLC. I'm here to speak this evening, obviously in favor of what we're doing on the old hospital property. We are extremely excited about this project. With me or representing our team, Jim Price, Henry Goodwin, Chad Meldrum, Chip Goforth, our engineer with Cranston Engineering, James Dean, and our architect, KJ Jacobs with McMillan Paz and Smith. We think this is a home run for the community, for the city. Born and raised here. Don't plan on leaving anytime soon, Lord willing. And I'm extremely excited about this project. I live right around the corner, and I know it can be a huge bonus for the community. So with that said, I'll turn it over to KJ Jacobs to talk more about our concept plan and design. Thank you.
Good evening. My apologies to the audience that I have slightly updated imagery for you folks. The site plan that you looked at in the planning session, the work session, was slightly older than this one. I'm KJ Jacobs. I'm an architect with McMillan Paz and Smith Architecture. I live in Greenville, South Carolina, and have done a good bit of work down in the Aiken area. Happy to be back and be back in front of you folks. I just want to echo Tom's enthusiasm for this project. We've been working on it for a few months now, and there's no doubt that this is a legacy project for the Wyatt family. I think this is an incredibly important site for the city of Aiken, and so look forward to telling you a little bit about the project, and then happy to answer any questions. I'll try to be brief, but happy to answer any and all questions that you have. I guess a few key components to the site. I'm going to start in the back with the multifamily project. There's about 150 residential units planned on sort of the back side of the site. I alluded in work session to the grade change. There's a 60 or 70 foot fall from Richland Avenue to the back side of the site, so that the multifamily project kind of sits down the hill from the hotel. It's about 150 units. You see some surface parking associated with the multifamily. There's also what we refer to in the multifamily business as a podium. The multifamily is over a podium, so there's a concrete slab that's elevated with parking also underneath the building. So you don't don't see a lot of surface parking there, but there's significant parking underneath the building as well that serves the multifamily project. The public parking garage is about 400 spaces. It is shown, and I'll show you another image in a moment. It's shown as a 4-level deck, and to your upper right-hand side, that there's internal grade change between ramping there. So there's about 400 spaces on 4 levels. Because of the grade change of the site, again, it falls, as I think y'all know from Richland, it falls down the hill, both up to the page and then down Vaucluse as well. So the top level of the parking structure is essentially at grade at the corner of Richland and Vaucluse. And then as you go down Vaucluse and look back, you would see the full 4 stories of that deck. So it's quite obscured relative to what you see in some other sort of urban parking structures. And it's sort of by design to try to tuck it in and make it a little bit less visible. Obviously, anchoring the project, and the primary reason that we're here, is the new hotel and conference center. The conference center is anticipated to have about a 400 or 500 person capacity venue. I think many people in Aiken would tell you that that's a much needed void in the market as far as chamber meetings, all kinds of different functions, nonprofit events, wedding receptions, as well as small conference, kind of that niche conference market. So connected to that is a 100 or 110 key hotel that's about 4 stories of rooms. So from grade on Richland is obviously sort of the traditional public lobby of the hotel with 3 elevated floors of rooms. We're also planning a rooftop bar on the plan, step away from the mic, to the plan north above the conference center. Up on the roof, we're intending to have some type of a rooftop bar venue that would obviously be open to the public. The blue that you see sort of at the corner of Richland and Vaucluse would be a small pool that would primarily be for hotel guests. And then the rendering that I'll show you in a moment is on Richland Avenue. You'll see this is a 2-sided hotel where there's sort of a pedestrian and urban front entry to the property. But on the back side, if you were to Uber or drive here, you would come to the back side of the hotel, and there'd be a motor court where you would drop off and enter on grade. Excuse me, that entry drive that loops around from Morgan, that loops around the hotel over to the parking structure, it starts on grade, sort of up at Richland, and the whole motor court would be up high, kind of at the Richland height. And then as you leave that motor court and go around the conference center part of the building, it kind of dives down where you would service the hotel on that backside and would come over onto the top of that parking deck. So quick, easy entry in and out from the top side for hotel guests or for valet, but then also down at the bottom and on grade on the backside of it, entry and exit as well. As far as siting of the hotel, obviously this is a pretty critical site in my estimation for Aiken. It's really a gateway site as you come from North Augusta into town on Richland. We see that as a tremendous opportunity to provide an exciting new project for Aiken. There's been discussion y'all had in work session and as well as internally about the relative placement of the building to Richland. We're showing it in this image. It's actually a bit further back than what you saw in work session. It's about 35 feet off of the wall, the stone wall that we intend to keep. So continuing to study that, we know that we don't want it right up on Richland, and we're real sensitive to pushing it too far back. We don't want it to appear suburban or disengaged with the street. So we'll continue to study that, but we think that where we're showing it is fairly close. That does allow both the public sidewalk and the public right-of-way, the existing stone wall, and then a pretty good buffer for landscaping, the opportunity to come back with some potentially noble trees, as well as you see that we're indicating the idea of perhaps a restaurant or other public an amenity that could really engage the public. We really see this as an opportunity to start to draw folks. It's not, we debated the length of the walk. It can't be more than 10 minutes from downtown, from the heart of downtown. So, we really think it's a great opportunity to keep that activity on the corner, really give folks both a reason from downtown to walk out to the hotel, but if you're staying in the hotel, not to get in your car and drive downtown, but to walk downtown as well.
is it, just curious, and I hate to interrupt you right quick, the thing you're showing there on the blow up on the screen?
Yes, sir.
Is that scaled, basically? Is that scale accurate with regard to that pond back there, or is that?
Sir, the relative
So that's
scale
a
is-
big pond, then? It looks like that's,
Be smaller.
I mean, that's fine, I like it like that. but I
And we're meeting the open space requirement as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I think part of the site is really, I think the city of Aiken's talking about making some public sidewalk improvements between here and downtown.
Yes.
Obviously, we want to extend that. I know there's a bike corridor planned in the comprehensive plan to come past the site down Vaucluse. I mean, we really see this as being an active, energetic site. And then you see the indication of the walking trails, both for hotel guests and multifamily, the folks that live in the apartments, but for folks in Aiken as well. There's some wonderful gardens here. There's a great history of outdoor spaces that we want to continue in this project.
Okay, good.
Just real quickly, the architecture that you saw in your initial package was fairly early work. What we have here is a two-dimensional front elevation of the building and what we call mood imagery. These are just representative projects, some we've done, some others have done, that start to capture what we think the architecture is going to be, the look and feel of the building before we've completely designed the building. And I think the big takeaway for us is that we want this to be consistent with the architectural heritage of Aiken and sort of small southern towns, and use classical architectural materials and forms, but with a more modern detailing. It's a little hard to see from here, but there are things like steel I-beams over windows instead of what would otherwise be a classical brick or keystone lintel. So really looking at the detailing to have kind of a classical architectural form, but really kind of a more modern interpretation on that, and really just have a really nice hotel experience that I think both recalls the architecture of Aiken in the South, as well as appears to be a modern contemporary building as well. We're real sensitive to the scale. It's about a 54-foot building right now from Richland to the top of that parapet. That's one reason we want to step the building back, and you see several different forms that are stepping in and out. So we want to be real careful with the massing of it to make sure that it's got a very good pedestrian feel, and feels very comfortable from the pedestrian experience.
So is that the front of the hotel that you're showing there?
That would be the Richland Avenue.
The Richland Avenue?
Yes, sir.
But it would be the same type structure all the way?
Yes, sir. The
around.
architecture would be similar around.
Right.
Yes, sir. And then, I believe this is the same image as you have on the board. And again, you can see an indication that there is some space in front of the building to plant noble trees or have, either, kind of passive space or, hardscaping. We view this as, a very, very intricately designed hardscaping and just a very urban project. The site's a little tricky because it isn't downtown. I mean, it's very close to downtown, but it very quickly transitions into sort of a suburban development. So we really want to anchor the corner of downtown with a project that really feels urban and really sets the tone as you come into town. Okay, I've talked enough. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions?
Do you know how many parking spaces you'll have under the residential area for residential? Have you figured that out yet?
150.
150?
So
It would basically be one per unit then?
So between the
Approximately,
surface lot and the parking underneath, it'd be 1.5 spaces per unit.
Okay.
Throughout this, you mentioned quality apartments. How are you defining that? What does that mean?
So we do not have any architecture to show you on those. I mean, I think, and I'll let my client speak up if they disagree. I mean, I think the idea, the hotel building is envisioned as being a brick. That's painted brick, a white painted brick that we're showing, kind of a brick and cast stone and glass. We envision the apartments being compatible and complementary. I think just like the parking structure would have some architectural elements that would start to recall the architecture of the hotel and tie, we won't fully clad the parking deck to make it look like a non-parking deck structure, but the idea would be to put, some architectural cladding on it to tie the two together so that they're compatible. And the multifamily the same way. I mean, we don't envision using brick and cast stone for the entire building. We do imagine using brick and perhaps hardy board and those kinds of things. Perhaps a half of a step down in sort of the quality or the cost of the materials, but certainly compatible with them stylistically and just kind of from a development. I mean, I think, both projects benefit off of one another. To be the last thing that the hotel wants to do is put really low-end apartments behind it. So certainly a vested interest in making those, be architecturally compatible.
In regards to the development of, let's call it the hotel and then parking garage and then a single family.
Yes, sir.
What is the kind of the schedule of those? You doing all three at once, doing one at a time? I mean,
I think the intention is for the hotel and the parking structure to be the first phase and simultaneous. And I think the multifamily is right now a later phase to be determined.
gotcha. Thank you.
You're talking 4 ingress, egress points, 3 along Barnwell and 1 on Morgan. Is that still accurate?
Morgan, backside on Barnwell for the parking structure, and then into the parking podium on Barnwell for the multifamily, and then on another one there.
So the hotel drive-through would come off of Morgan.
That's right.
Swing around, leave your car, check in, whatever you're going to do, would be on the back side of the hotel there.
Yes, sir. All of that car stuff, unloading the kids and luggage would all happen on the backside and in a motor court.
Yeah. Is the conference center 1 story? Would that be a 1-story building?
It is not. It is on the main level of the hotel.
Yeah.
With rooms and the bar, the restaurant, the rooftop venue above it. Below it, there would be a basement that I referenced the service earlier. Because of the grade change, we're going to use the space beneath the conference center for the service, for the hotel and conference center service. But the ballroom itself would be essentially a double height space, 2-story space.
Okay. Now, will this be an independently owned hotel as, say, a Wilcox, or is the intention that it be part of a major chain?
I'll defer that answer to my client. What time you going to talk about?
Intention right now is for it to be a boutique property with support from a major chain,
Okay.
part of a major chain system, reservation system, their support, et cetera.
Okay, thank you.
That would typically mean that you're not following sort of the suburban model of a brand standards of a Hampton Inn or a Hyatt Place where you come in with an architectural package. It's that the property is designed by the owner, and then they help. There's their back end in operating and reservation system.
I get that.
Thank you.
Questions? Any other questions? Have you seen reviewed the exceptions to this proposal, or the conditions, I should say? Have you reviewed those possible conditions, 1 through 7 there?
Yes, sir.
Are those okay with you? You don't have any problem with any of those?
Let me look at those before we say that. I think that, do you all want to speak to the traffic study in particular?
Mr. Chairman, I'm Jim Price, work with the Wyatt Group. The conditions we think are achievable. We don't have a real issue with them. The one thing you're telling me to do a traffic study when we fall below the threshold of
Well,
3,000 cars, we're doing.
It falls below the threshold required for a traffic study.
That's correct.
Why would y'all want them to do that?
So we've gotten word that DOT wants them to do a traffic study. So one thing we could do on there, what we've done previously on some of these is that, on that condition 3, and thought I had edited this, that a traffic management study be approved if required by the South Carolina Department of Transportation.
Right.
And then if it were to be approved, we're essentially, we don't necessarily have a requirement for the city traffic engineer, but that it also gets submitted to us so we can coordinate with DOT and the site plan to make sure there's no real hang up in the development process.
So we could theoretically modify the condition to say, prior to approval of the site plan, the traffic management study, if required by the DOT.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's been
Be
more
approved
typical
if
of the condition
required.
we've placed on previous
That
applications.
way, I mean, we don't have, if DOT requires it, we're all subject to them.
That's correct.
But we would put, I would be willing to suggest that we say it if it's required. If they don't require it,
Yep.
Good.
we're good.
The only other thing for speed purposes, as much as anything, is being able, the multifamily will be like-kind material components. We would like, if possible, if the planning commission would allow our architects to work with staff so that we could move that process along, provided we start that.
Yeah, I agree. And speaking of number 5 specifically, I think the simplest and the quickest and I think the most effective way would allow it just to go through the planning director prior to the issue, not have to come back to us.
We would request that.
I'm fine with that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, anything else? Any other questions?
Had
Yes,
one
sir.
more. So it addresses Richland and Vaucluse, but doesn't address Barnwell. And the way this is laid out, it seems like most of the traffic is going to be on Barnwell Avenue, which is not a real substantial street. I mean, it's pretty heavily traveled. I think we've talked about that before. So I'm assuming we would look at Barnwell as well, not just Richland and Vaucluse.
If a traffic study is done, in this case, it's mostly the turning movements that you'd be looking at. The roads are typically built out to right of way, and they are of a high level of service, or level of service A or B. The Richland and Vaucluse intersection is a level of service A intersection. So traffic flow is generally good. Generally, what they would be looking at, if DOT did require one, would be the turning movements related to each of the drives to make sure that they're functioning appropriately.
Right.
And for your point, we would have to have DOT curb cut application and approval from SCDOT to get those cuts, and they'll be looking at movement, ingress, egress, and trip generation.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank y'all very much.
Thanks very much. Okay, that is, anybody else wants to speak on behalf? Anybody wants to speak in opposition to this proposal? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Laura Bagwell. I live at 2111 Solstice Meadow Lane in Aiken, and I also own 2 homes on Calmia Hill near Richland Avenue. And you didn't have an intermediate category for supporting with conditions, but
Correct.
I'm not opposed to this. I enthusiastically support the redevelopment of the subject properties. I want that to be, as the applicants have described, a vibrant, mixed-use gateway at the top of the Richland Avenue Hill. Wow. I mean, speaking to y'all and also to the applicants, the idea of a new motel in that corridor is a wonderful idea. My properties on Calmia Hill are very close to some unsavory hotels on Richland Avenue, and the crime that we see coming through our neighborhoods that's associated with those. I think, maybe this could help be a seed for a wonderful improvement that will flow all the way down the Richland Avenue Hill, and that I will enthusiastically support. But I also strongly support a redevelopment plan that would preserve and repurpose the old hospital building and the nurses' home rather than demolish those structures, which I believe are historic and worthy of saving. The notion of historic preservation and adaptive reuse is something that I know is in the wheelhouse of the applicant. I know that. I also know that the applicants have not achieved the great success that they have achieved by ignoring economic incentives. And there are a ton of economic incentives and tax credits that are available to repurpose those buildings on that lot. For instance, there's a 25% credit on state income tax, corporate license fees, or property taxes for abandoned building renovation. There is up to 20% of renovation costs federal income tax credit for renovation of an historic building. There's a range of credits, including state income tax credits for renovation of a historic building. There's local property tax freeze assessed at a pre-rehabilitation rate for 10 years in Aiken. And there are also, plus or minus, the Opportunity Zone Fund, which could apply to capital gains taxes. Now, since we've been unable to present this to you sooner, I'm going to give this to your staff and ask that you enter that into your record so that you will understand our research that we've done on this. And we're not just Johnny-come-latelys to this. As a baseball fan, too, one of the applicants used the term home run. I can tell that this plan, that they're really swinging for the fences here. I'm going to encourage them that they can really hit a home run if they listen to the voices of the citizens who want these buildings preserved. I know that they can do a plan that would preserve and renovate these buildings. There is a rising tide of public support for saving these buildings. And I wanted to bring that to your attention tonight, and also to leave with your applicant the same handout that I've given to you, and ask that they consider this with all the same seriousness that you're considering your decisions tonight. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else? Yes, ma'am. Lucy.
Good evening. I'm Lucy Knowles, 1141 Two Notch Road in the city of Aiken. And I also support the concept of a hotel and apartments at this site, and I think it would be a great thing for the city. However, I find this concept plan very disappointing. And I heard the architect talk about how this was, the elevation of the hotel was classic Aiken. And I just absolutely do not see that. As a lifelong resident of Aiken, this is not a classic Aiken elevation. And I too am disappointed that the applicant didn't take the opportunity to reuse the hospital and the nurses' home. This is the very most creative and innovative thing in hotel design these days. For example, the TWA terminal in Kennedy Airport has been redesigned into a great hotel, and one of the premier boutique hotel designers has great success and has created new hotels out of one, a church, and two, a bank. So this is the hip, creative thing to do, and it's very disappointing that the applicant has not chosen to reuse these buildings and do something really creative and innovative for our town. And I'd also like to follow up with what Ms. Bagwell said. And basically, if this is a $24 million project, there would be up to $6 million in tax credits available for the project. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Oh, yes, ma'am. I didn't.
Good evening. My name is Mandy Drumming. I live at 412 Northwest Pendleton Street. As the others have stated before, the concept plan before us, is detailed and thought out, better than what we've seen in the recent past. But I really feel to truly carry Aiken forward according to the city comprehensive plan and with the focus really on economic development, we must not tear down the historic hospital buildings. Let's, reuse them, incorporate them into the new build. Last week, I attended the Historic Augusta Inc.'s 15th annual downtown loft tour, and the energy was amazing. They sold more tickets than ever before, over 429 tickets, and we toured historic apartments and condos, and not all of them were loft style. It's about that creativity of using the old and the new together, and we toured historic houses turned into multiple residences, and the people we spoke with that were owning or renting these historic properties, they were young. They were young men. One of them we spoke with worked at Fort Gordon, and he even stated that it was a bit of a drive, but he thought the condo that he bought was a good investment. And downtown Augusta, as we've noticed, is it's a vibrant place than what it was 10 years ago. The buzzwords today, such as adaptive reuse and what's old is new again and repositioning, those are trending in today's real estate development. And today's workforce, the creative class, and these young techies, we want to entice, and known as the engines driving new wealth, they crave authenticity and community culture. As our world, it's becoming more and more artificial and anonymous at a machine-made pace. In February 2017, just recently, Commercial Architecture published an article titled "Old is New Again, Is It Worth It?" And they're stating adaptive reuse is as old as buildings, but a new appreciation for connections to the past is driving it today. Less than 6 months ago, Biz Journal printed an article about recent adaptive reuse mixed-use projects in Atlanta, and it says, quote, that this one president of this firm loves to wake these old buildings up and prove to communities and lenders that they are vital to the region's economic development. And then the article also goes on and says, quote, and now that there's precedent for strong return on such investments, adaptive reuse is to become an even more viable, in-demand alternative to new construction. And then just less than 3 months ago, Smart Meetings magazine published an article, quote, downtown meetings, what's old is new again. Countless properties across the United States have been brought back to life through adaptive reuse, through which old structures, warehouses, banks, even pawn shops, elementary schools, churches, and mortuaries have been renovated and turned into hotels, bars, restaurants, and other venues. And these properties are ideal for meeting planners, as they tend to have that kind of built-in historic vibe that can make an event all the more memorable. We see the Wilcox, and these projects are all over the country. And I'm sure asbestos and mold and structural challenges were present with many of these. I think they looked at it as not really a challenge, but kind of an opportunity. I remember being in grad school, I took exhibition design, and our final project was to do an exhibition with objects that were art objects from the 30s, and we were given not just a room, which our previous projects were. This was our final project, and we had to. The building was built in the 1930s, the same time period as these objects, and they had the option of tearing it down, but really those A pluses that came through and that were these projects that were celebrated were the ones that used that building to create this exhibition. Some have asked why we haven't raised money to buy this hospital site, but what would happen if we raised this money and, we present this to county council, this group of people raise this money, we present it to county council, and this higher bidder comes in and accepts the later bid. It's very different situations than some of these other projects in Aiken, historic projects. And so, if the need is to move Aiken forward and drive economic development, to do it to its fullest and to excellent level, Aiken really can't afford to not to reuse this this historic resource. And the Aiken Hospital is the biggest historic building we have in Aiken. And let's please look at this as, not a challenge, but opportunity. In the Aiken community, we're here to help make this like a win-win for everyone. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Elizabeth Burgess, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak about this property. And I know that it seems like those of us that are in support of preserving the hospital should be directing a lot of our comments to WTC Investments. So I have direct comments that I think should be directed to the Planning Commission. You know that this hospital is important to a lot of people in the community, and in your line of inquiry on the concept plan, I didn't hear any questions if WTC Investments had considered preserving the hospital and incorporating it into their plan. I don't know if tearing down a resource like that is the best use, the best sustainability mindset for our community. And I know that it's a great urban concept. We have local interest here, but I think that it could be more Aiken. And I think the Planning Commission has some obligation to that. I think once it's gone, people may forget it, never know it was there. But if it's kept, then everyone will remember, and they'll be grateful to you for helping it happen.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Rocky Napier. I've owned a business on Trafalgar Street for the past 30 years, just a block or so away from this site. I have several questions that I would like to see if we could clarify at this particular point in time. I'll start out with the residential aspect of this proposal. Is this going to be a low-income or federally subsidized housing unit? And who's going to own it once it's built?
Y'all want to address that?
It's not going to be low-income housing. It's going to be high-end housing.
So it's not going to be government subsidized in any way whatsoever? My second question concerns the architectural aspect of the building. If I understand what was said earlier correctly by the architect, this residential unit is going to be erected or mounted on top of piers and a concrete slab, and there will be open parking underneath. It'll be covered, but it'll be open along all of the sides.
I don't know what you're asking there. I'm not sure.
Well, is the building sitting up on a concrete slab supported by concrete columns with open parking underneath that has no walls?
You want to address that?
I'm happy to. No, I wouldn't say that there are no walls. I think the architecture is going to come down to the ground. There will be openings in that wall, but it won't be the way you described it with concrete stills and just wide open underneath.
The reason why I'm asking the question is, over the years, I've seen parking garages that look like residential units or hotels, and I've seen hotels and residential units that look like parking garages. And I'm concerned about the architectural aspects of this building when it's complete. I also heard comments that this building would probably be sided with brick and hardy board siding, which reminds me of the architectural design and components of the Wyndham House, which is adjacent to this property. And I would find that to be a drastic change in architecture from what's being proposed and what's being expected at the hotel site. So I would like to see, before any further consideration goes for this conceptual plan, that we see elevations and see additional design drawings of what this residential unit's going to look like. Because I think what it's going to look like is going to determine what price it'll command as far as monthly rental goes in the end.
Okay.
My other question is, the pool in the amenity area of the residential unit, is that going to be on the ground floor, on the bottom floor, at the same elevation as the parking that surrounds that amenity area? It's above it? And how many floors is the residential unit above the parking? 3? Okay. My next questions go to, relative to the parking garage. It's been referred to that this is a public parking garage. Is this parking garage going to be owned by the city and operated by the city, or is it going to be owned and operated by the hotel?
By the hotel.
Not going to be owned by the city, I don't think. Didn't know.
Well, there's three things that, this is a very creative proposal, because there's three things that we all know the city wants right now. The city wants a convention center of some type, and we have a nominal proposal here for that. The city wants additional parking downtown, parking garage. We have an intent to that. And then the city wants some high-density residential units. And so that's being addressed too. Those are three things that are on the city's bucket list right now. And so I think the proposal is kind of creative from that particular standpoint. Also, the city has mentioned that it needs additional parking for its employees. And so I'm wondering, is this garage going to be used to shuttle city employees back and forth to work? Or is that going to be a proposal or part of the concept? We're 6 blocks from downtown, and I just don't see city employees coming to work and being shuttled back and forth to work over a 6-block.
I don't see this,
No, I don't see that
I don't
either.
see this garage being used for city employees, unless the city employee maybe wanted to use it.
So I go back to my question, is this going to be owned and operated by the city for city use and city income? Or is this parking garage going to be owned and operated by the hotel for the convention center?
Don't know the answer to that.
I think that's a question that needs to be answered before we go forward with the approval of this concept plan. Because these are critical questions that need to be answered, because it's going to affect the overall outcome of the project.
I don't,
Relative to the hotel, as was mentioned earlier, I think the hotel is located extremely, way too close to Richland Avenue. I don't know what the traffic count is on Richland Avenue every day, but I would imagine Richland Avenue right there in that particular area is probably a very highly traveled road. It's also noisy. I noticed between the hotel along Morgan Street and along Richland Avenue, not only are there 2 entrances, which I see could have a potentially good purpose, but I also see areas for hotel guests to gather, or what it looks like for area hotel guests to gather, and also with the pool, et cetera, being right there located immediately adjacent to Richland Avenue. I just don't see that as being a very quiet and secluded place for hotel guests to relax and enjoy themselves. Also, as it relates to the bar, the rooftop bar, those are very much in vogue today. You see them placed on hotels of all types, all across the South now, and even up north. But I fail to see the view. As you look to the west, you're going to see the parking garage. As you look to the south, you're going to see the intersection of Richland Avenue, Waterloo, and Vaucluse Road. You're going to see a lot of traffic lights. So I fail to see what type of view we're going to be creating there for the hotel guests in the hotel. And I guess that's going to somehow be tied into the restaurant, and maybe a restaurant with outdoor seating. typically what happens, it seems like to me, with hotel developments, is that these amenities for the hotel guests is located on the more secluded areas of the property, and the entrance to the hotel, where you drive up to the hotel and get valet parking or drop off your luggage or whatever, that's generally located on the busier side of the hotel, not the
Sometimes.
secluded side of the hotel.
Sometimes. A lot of hotels nowadays are building on the streets and their entrances are on the back.
Yeah.
And there's several in Columbia that are like that.
Yeah, and I'm familiar with Charleston Place down in Charleston, for example, which does that. But my whole point is this, is with this hotel located as close as it is to Morgan Street and Richland Avenue, I don't think those type of amenities will be used as well as they would be if they were located in a different location. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, my name is Amy McCoy, and I just moved to Aiken with my husband 3 weeks ago. When my husband works at the Savannah River site, and when choosing a location to move to, we decided on Aiken because of its historical aspects. Before this, we've lived in Athens, Atlanta, and El Paso. My husband was in the military, so it moved us around a lot. Most of the thriving areas in those towns are repurposed historic buildings. We've been told multiple times by citizens that, wow, we're so glad you moved here. Aiken is trying to attract young professionals. So tearing down the building instead of repurposing it sends a clear message to me and my husband that Aiken is not the right city for us to live in. It's in our neighborhood. I was actually told by someone, you wouldn't want to walk in that neighborhood. Don't walk too far from that building. I live 1 mile from there. Is that a long walk? So that was pretty upsetting to hear that. I don't want to drive by this building if it's torn down every day. I would have to drive by and see that the leaders in Aiken let this beautiful old building be torn down. That is something I will have to drive by every day if I continue to live in your town, in my current neighborhood. So allowing the building to be torn down instead of repurposed tells me that I chose the wrong city and I need to move to North Augusta. So I would respectfully ask you all to consider voting against this proposal. And one more point, as a family housing development, I would not stay there because I would not want to live next to a hotel where it has guests coming in and out, drinking alcohol, driving, I wouldn't feel safe living that close to a hotel. And I wouldn't want my kids to have to look at a pool that they can't swim in every day. That doesn't make sense on that aspect. So anyways, thank you. It was nice meeting y'all, and hopefully I will be seeing more of you in the future.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Okay. We have a motion.
Mr. Chairman. Respect the applications number 19-60012, rezone, and number 19-23001. Concept plan rezone and concept plan approval, tax parcel number 104-20-21-001, PO and 002, applicant WTC Investments LLC. Location 828 Richland Avenue West and 159 Warren Street Southwest. I recommend that we approve the zoning change from office to planned commercial with the conditions listed, except for number 3. I'd like to add an amendment that we approve this if conduct a traffic management study if required by SCDOT.
Okay.
Second.
So modify number 3 to say if a traffic management study is required.
Correct.
Got it. You can make make that, can you make that wording with that?
Yes, that's enough
Right.
guidance.
And then also 5, I mean, number 5, you see there's 2 options. You want to go with the first option there, A?
That's correct.
5A.
That's correct.
So just for clarification, 5A would mean that building plans in the future, building, I guess, elevation type in the future for the residential structure would come back to the planning director as opposed to through the full concept plan process.
Correct, unless, and it would be in your judgment if it's massive. You know, you're going to have to make a call there.
Right, we say it's conditioned that it's consistent with the architecture and materials described herein and with the hotel.
Correct. Okay, we got the motion, we got a second? Discussion. Yes.
The motion included approval of the concept plan, right?
Yes.
Okay.
It did. It did. Discussion?
Mr. Chair, I just want to mention, I mean, I appreciate all the sides of this plan. I think it's healthy debate for Aiken. I think it's debate we've needed for a long time. There was a comment about the Planning Commission having an obligation to preserve and protect, something along those lines, and I agree with that, but we also have an obligation to move this city forward, intelligently move it forward. And I think this is a great opportunity for the city of Aiken to move forward in a smart way. I think it's important that we look at all sides. I think this item has come up for debate for a long time now. We're not just making these motions and approvals on a whim. I think the developer, being a lifelong Aiken resident, has a vested interest. This is not like another group that's out of town that's going to leave if things get bad. They're in it till the end. And I hope the young lady continues to think about living in Aiken because you mentioned North Augusta. Well, North Augusta is growing, and it ain't all repurposing. A lot of it's new. And if we don't get ahead of this game, it's going to hurt us. And as a contractor by day, that building right there is not doable to repurpose it to meet today's codes and the requirements that is involved today. It's doable if you got a lot of money. And it's been sitting vacant for a long time. And there's folks that have come in here who have walked away from it because of the investment it would take to make that thing work. So I applaud WTC, and I hope that we can continue to move this forward and move the city of Aiken forward.
Yeah, I'll echo those comments. We have now, this is really our 3rd hearing in which we have dealt with this issue in one way or another, from the historical overlay request to the initial purchaser wanting us to waive density requirements, which we did not do. Then the overlay request, historical overlay request, which we considered also, had lots and lots of public input from lots and lots of people. Not necessarily all negative, some positive, but this property has been sitting there now for 2 to 3, 3 years now? For 4 or 5 years, just been sitting there. Any point in time, anybody could have come forward, I want to repurpose it. Nope, just sat there, rotting, molding, falling apart. This hospital does not even have weep holes. The bricks do not even have weep holes. You know, when you build a brick facade, brick mortar and all leaks, architects have talked to us. It's not reasonably doable. I am a big believer in redoing buildings and repurposing buildings. And we have repurposed buildings in Aiken. No question about it. And would do it in this case if it was doable. It has not been doable. There's been lots of opportunities for people to try and come forward. It has not happened. So I think this is a good proposal. It may not be a perfect proposal. It's a plan which we're going to, I hope, approve, and the city council can continue to take a look at it. Having been said, all in favor, raise your hand. Opposed, like sign. Okay, passed unanimously. Motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second? So moved.